Alright, we are back with another tournament to recap for you guys. IEM Rio has been going underway since the beginning of this week, and today we are concluding the group stage activities and getting ready for the playoff weekend. So today we're going to be going over everything you need to know about Group A, Group B, who made it through, who went home, and what you need to know going into the exciting conclusion over the next few days. There is a ton to go over, so we're not going to waste any time at all. So go ahead and take a second and leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm, so thank you for doing it. Without any further ado, let's get into the specifics. Now, for the sake of brevity, we have a lot to go over. We're going to skim through the best of ones from the first day, and then start getting into the specifics regarding the best of threes from there on. We're also going to primarily focus on the teams that are qualifying to the playoffs first, and then we'll talk about some of the teams who didn't qualify towards the end of the video. As always, if you want to skip around, you can check the chapters in the description to get to where you want to go first, though I do recommend, obviously, that you watch the video in full. With that, we kick off the event with Furia taking on Faze Clan. Furia obviously trying to do something on home soil here in Rio, and they start off their campaign very well. They took care of Faze with ease on Dust 2, 13-7. K Serato had a great game, Cello had a great game as well. Tactically, Furia looking a lot better than they have previously, and as we'll cover more in depth later on, this version of Furia is looking like a threat to make a deep run at this championship. For Faze, it's another slow start. They continue to just look so different game to game. You don't know what you're going to get out of them. And with how fickle this format is, losing one best of one, losing one best of three, and you're out, this is just not the start you wanted from Faze, but again, more on that in just a little bit. Next up, we had MANY taking on Pain, also on Dust 2. This was definitely a close one. Pain Gaming opened up with a very good CT half. Lux ended up with 18 kills to start the game, and would go on to finish with 27 total, but it just felt like as a team, they couldn't really handle what MANY were doing. In the second half especially, the Pain Gaming attack just could not get through that MANY defense, and that ability that we've seen from MANY previously where everybody on this team can take over when they need it, just had them ahead of Pain at the end of the day, allowing them to take the win and move on to the upper bracket. Following them, we had Navi taking on Imperial, and this was a one-sided stomp. Navi took on Imperial 13-2. There's just really not much to say here. Imperial, they're on home soil. You would expect the Rio buff to come in for them like it did for Furia, but Navi are a different class of team, even with their own major flaws. More on that again in just a little bit. But here, Navi did not allow any ghost of a chance from Imperial, took care of work cleanly, and move on to the upper bracket. We then had the battle for America, brother. Liquid taking on Complexity in a battle so goddamn patriotic you haven't seen it since the Hulk took on the Macho Man. Ooh yeah. Unfortunately, as a Complexity fan, this continues to be a one-sided rivalry as Liquid took care of work very quickly, 13-6 on Inferno, and yeah, you know, this was just Liquid continue to kick our asses. That's what this boils down to. All I have to say about this game is that Elise played worse than Yakindar. That's not good. Speaking of ass kickings, Vitality handed one to 9Z over on Mirage 13-3. Once again, 9Z have been a team that's shown some really great performances throughout the year, but at the end of the day, Vitality is one of the two best teams in the world, and they're just not going to allow an upset, even in a best one like this, unless something goes hilariously wrong, and that was just not today. Zywoo had an insane ace on round 9, that's what's in the background, and yeah, that's, you know, sometimes you just run up against a better team, 9Z. You know, you can't really do much about that sometimes. Next up is another one of those moments in IEM Rio where we are seeing just some massive upsets. Heoric taking on G2. G2 just coming off the backs of winning at the Blast Fall Finals, and here they immediately crumble against Heoric 13-10 on Dust 2. And man, this is an insane turnaround for Heoric. They look night and day from some of their previous performances in the year. Tesses was a monster, 29 kills against G2. He was everywhere. And not only that, Dexter looking good with the opponent's hands. The calling from Kicksam was elite. They just flat out outplayed G2 in this game. And honestly, it was the normal G2 disaster. Malbs and Muncie were great. Snacks wasn't even terrible, but Nico and Hunter, they went missing, and when the firepower drops below insanity, suddenly you realize that G2 doesn't have a strat book, and that's what happened here. They got outgunned, they got outbrained, and they're going to have to drop down to the lower bracket. More on that in just a little bit. Alright, we're getting to the end of these best of ones. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. We had the Mongols taking on Virtus Pro. And honestly, Virtus Pro find themselves in a weird position. They're definitely a team with a large identity crisis. The Mongols, they're always on the outside looking in at the top 10. They've shown some promise throughout the year. Can they make a run here at Rio and maybe make a deep playoff run for once? Well, for the Mongols, they start off strong. They take care of VP here very quickly, 13-10. It was a close game down the stretch on Mirage. For Virtus Pro, I think some early good signs are that Electronic and Norbert are both looking better as individuals here. James goes completely missing, and that's a big deal for them. The lack of the op on Mirage will kill you every time. Over for the Mongols, I think you've gotten pretty much everything you could ask for here. 9-10 had a great game. Techno had a much better game than usual. Blitz continues to perform well. Senzu definitely struggled, but as long as 9-10 or Blitz are performing well, they have enough firepower to beat a team like Virtus Pro, and that's what we saw play out here. Though Virtus Pro would get their revenge, more on that again in just a little bit. And finally, our last best of one to seed the rest of the event, we had Eternal Fire taking on Astralis. Eternal Fire have been on a run of form where they have looked so much better lately, so I would expect them to actually do a decent run in this field, but this was not the start you would want. A 13-11 loss to Astralis definitely doesn't look that good. This new Cadian-led Astralis so far has not produced much to be really that noteworthy, but I will say, to their credit, the team play here at this event has looked a lot better. I think Stair and Stown both have looked more comfortable in this system, and while Cadian is certainly never going to put up any good numbers without the op in his hands, you are going to get into some situations where you can double op behind Device, and then the team can actually start to do some really cool stuff. Outside that, Device continues to play really well, they looked better tactically, and they took care of work down the stretch against a very good Inferno team. EF definitely missing the impact of Calyx for sure. That contributed a lot to why they couldn't get this game over the line. Alright, so the reason we started off by going over all of these best of ones is to highlight how weird this format is for IEM Rio. This doesn't work with the way CS2 is played. If you lose your first round best of one and then lose the following best of three, you are out of the tournament with only having played a maximum of 4 maps. That's very fickle with how volatile MR12 makes best of ones. Best of ones simply don't work in current Counter-Strike and should be eliminated at all costs. So now that we've seen how these best of ones have shaken up, we know what the seeding is going to be for the following best of threes, and we can keep that in mind as we go over some of the narratives of the tournament. Now, once again, a lot of games are being played, so we're going to focus first on the teams that have advanced through to the playoffs, and then at the end of the video, we will touch on some of the teams who didn't make it. Let's start first by talking about Furia, who are one of the upstart upsets of the event so far. So really, there is no downplaying it. This run to a semi-final spot in a Tier 1 tournament from Furia has been legit as hell. The only thing you can criticize is that the fact that they only had to play 2 best of 3s to get there, but really, this is a shorter tournament. It's just a 5-day event, and Furia can only play the teams in front of them. And the teams they played in front of them were Faze in an opening best of 1, MAUs in a best of 3, and then Navi in a best of 3. And yeah, listen, Faze has slipped up a lot recently, but we're still talking about 3 of the very best teams this year, and 2 of the current best teams right now in MAUs and Navi, who are, let me remind you, the best team in the world. So starting off, they faced MAUs in the upper semifinals, and they beat them in 3 games. And this was a back and forth series in terms of scoreline. We start off on Nuke, where Furia handled MAUs very fast, 13-8. We move on to Mirage, where MAUs strike back with a win of their own, 13-5. Then we close on Dust 2, where Furia shut the door on MAUs, 13-5 as well. So all of these maps were dominant victories for both teams, but Furia pulled ahead when they needed to. On Nuke, I think the thing we need to point out here is that this game was very close. It was 9-8, and then MAUs lost a crucial round, allowing Furia to take the lead 10-8, and the problem from there is that their economy was very close to being broken. Round 19 was the difference breaker. If MAUs had managed to win that round, then things would have gone very interesting for the rest of the game. But because they're unable to hold off and win on their T side, Furia not only get that 11th round, but they get match point for free because MAUs are forced to save. This is why the economy management is so important. If you can't win your gun rounds, MR12 is going to shut the door on you really quick. MAUs, they fell behind and simply couldn't break through the Furia defense on their final buy round to try and keep the game alive. Furia, they played very well here. Right now, this is the best form we have seen this team with any iteration of this lineup since Fallen has joined. The calling looks better. Fallen as an individual looks better. They're getting impact out of Cello, Skulls, Yuri. Serato is also back in winning form. Serato as of right now is leading the tournament with a 1.56 rating, and he was electric in both of these series. He led both teams here with 50 kills, he had 22 on Nuke, he led the way on Mirage even though they lost, and yeah, listen, he bottom fragged on Dust too, but this was more of a team effort. Yuri led the way, but everyone had their moments. Like I said, they've definitely been playing better. They slipped up on Mirage here. Mouse just ran them over. On the first half, they could not defend against the Mouse attack whatsoever. After the pistol round and the first eco round after were settled, Furia were only able to win 2 more CT rounds. And at that point, Mouse continued that momentum throughout the rest of the game, winning 8 straight at one point and just taking over the game. No big deal. That's going to happen against a team like Mouse from time to time. But the ability for Furia to strike back and keep their head in the game on Dust 2 was remarkable, as they pretty much handed the same kind of whipping right back to Mouse. Their T-side on Dust 2 was equally unstoppable as Mouse's was on Mirage. They won 9 T rounds on their opening half, and at that point, MR12 leaves no room for a comeback even with the pistol round win for Mouse. Furia, they lock it in, they stay in control, and they take the series win. A shocking upset considering Furia's form in recent tournaments. And at this point, with beating Mouse, they are guaranteed a playoff spot. They have qualified to the playoffs. They're just playing for seeding against Navi, who's going to the quarterfinals, who's going straight to the semifinals. So I don't think anyone expected Furia to be able to compete against Navi. Navi, for all their faults, are still an incredible team, and that's why they're the #1 in the world. So everyone was shocked when Furia walked out and beat Navi straight up 2-0. 13-10 on Nuke, incredible in the clutch and exploiting that huge gaping hole in Navi's map pool, more on that later. And then they walk out onto Mirage, Navi's best map, Navi arguably the best Mirage team in the world, and they spanked them 13-4. Furia absolutely dominated Navi on Mirage and had them like their second Mirage loss period in like 3 months. Like I said, we'll talk more about the fact that Navi absolutely disappointed the series when we get to Navi in a later section. I want to focus purely here on talking about the good that we're seeing out of Furia. Right now, I have to give credit to Fallen. I think Fallen is calling a tighter, more cohesive game, and most importantly, he seems to have found his groove with the AWP. At least for this event, he's been doing incredibly well. Multiple games on Nuke here where he's getting aggressive, taking picks towards Hut, hitting shots like this is 2016 again. He's getting great impact, and then players like Yuri, Skulls, they're backing him up on the CT side, they're anchoring for kills, and then Serato's able to just go free and be wild. This is the realization of Furia we have been waiting for. This is a Furia that you think can actually win a title, and they're doing it on home soil. That's incredible. And then we move on to Mirage, and they looked like they made Navi look silly. They completely shut down Navi's T side. They controlled mid perfectly. They didn't allow B to be vulnerable. They allowed Navi to do nothing. It's crazy how much better they've looked in this series and in this tournament. Obviously, I've been very critical of the move for Skulls going to Furia. I thought it wasn't going to be enough, that the organization wasn't going to do enough while Serato was still at the top of his form like this. But hey, listen, Counter-Strike is not a static product, teams can change and adapt, and whatever Furia did to bootcamp for this event, they look so much better. The big question is, are they going to fall off? Will they maintain this deep into the playoffs? Because right now, we're on a teetering point. Either Furia is going to follow through, make a deep run here, and this is one of the best upsets of the year, or someone just got an extremely easy run to the grand finals. That's the reality of upsets. You can be very, very good in the group stage and shock a bunch of people, but now everyone's going to be prepping around what Furia are doing. They're looking at this new playbook. Are they going to allow them to continue to get that success when it really matters on stage? I don't know. I hope Furia doesn't have a drop-off, because right now, they look incredible. Moving on from one upset to a next, our next team making a playoff appearance is Heoric. And once again, I feel vindicated because I bet on Heoric at the beginning of the split back during the player break. You can go watch the video. I said Heoric were a dark horse team, someone that could strike out into the top 10 and potentially make a deep run in a tier 1 event. Unfortunately, Heoric's season thus far has been absolutely marred by visa issues, inability to perform when they need to, and we've never gotten to see them have a chance to really arrive as a team. But here at Rio, we are seeing the potential of this roster that's always been there. TeSeS, NeRTZ, Dexter, Shush, all playing incredible. TeSeS having incredible performances in both of these series to get them there. Dexter showing why he was picked up to be the opera for this team. all of it being piloted expertly by Kicksan. This is the Heroic that can absolutely make a run to the finals, and I would love to see it happen. And just like Furia, this run was legit. You start off beating G2, best of 1 admittedly, but you still beat G2 who just won the last tournament on the calendar, and then you move on to your first best of 3. You're taking on Astralis, the team that continues to poach all of your talent, the team that is the #1 team in Denmark for better or for worse. You walk out there, you stomp them 2-0. All of your former players, Cadian, Stown, Yabby, doesn't matter, not enough. Astralis, you hold them underwater until the bubbles stop. Device has a terrible series, he's absolutely missing. Meanwhile, Heroic just in cruise control. 13-9 on Mirage. Nerds looking insane, anchoring around the connector area, so good with the rifle in his hands. We go on to Ancient, it's 13-7. Again, even though Stown is performing well throughout the series, it doesn't matter. You keep that first half close, 6-6, and then just dominate on your T side. There's nothing this Astralis team can do. KD and Colleen be damned, that guy can't kill anything without an op in his hand. It doesn't even matter. I'd love to see Heroic getting their vengeance over Astralis like this. It was beautiful. And then once again, just like Furia, in a series where everyone expected you to lose, you come up against the second best team in the world in Vitality, and you 2-0 them. You just beat them straight up in a best of 3. You made them look silly on Anubis 13-5 after beating them on Mirage. Vitality, again, just like Navi, arguably the best Mirage team in the world, you beat them in a nail-biter 13-11 in the first map. This was just awesome, dude. I can't believe that Heroic managed to pull off this series. Now, fair is fair. This was an underperformance by Vitality. Zywoo was not present on this second map at all, and full credit to Heroic for taking advantage of that. Stepping back a bit, we start off on Mirage, and this is a tale of CT side dominance. You start off going down 10-2 to Vitality, and this was supposed to be the expected result, right? Vitality, they lock you down on the CT side, and then they're arguably the best T side in the world. There's no way Heroic can hold it down. And then Heroic win the second half pistol round. They win the round after. They win the first gun round. You're like, okay, all right, Heroic, I'm seeing you. I'm seeing what you're going for. And then Heroic win the next 5 straight, 8 straight rounds against Vitality's attack on Mirage, where you let them have nothing. Vitality barely sneak around past you after that, but then Heroic, they just calmly win out the game. They don't even seem bothered. They completely shut down, again, one of the most dominant T sides in the world. They neutralized Zywoo. Shush was everywhere, getting impact all over the place with the rifle in his hands, anchoring on A, rotating into B, it didn't matter. Dexter had great timely op aggression, pushing down into lower tunnels at points, getting great picks there. Their mid-control setup in general I thought was really good. The way they would counter smoke out Vitality, push up, clear boxes, it was all very well done. And man, this was just clinical Danish Counter-Strike. This is the Heroic system. You take something and you create something that's better than the sum of its parts. We all knew how good Shush, Tessus, Nurse, Dexter could be, and we're finally getting a tournament where all of them are here, they have time to prep, and they're all arriving at the same time. Awesome to see from Heroic. Alright, so we spent a lot of time there talking about Furia and Heroic because it's truly surprising seeing them make it through the group so cleanly. However, these next 2 teams that are in the playoffs definitely aren't surprising to anyone to see them there, and that's Navi and Vitality, though both teams are coming into this playoff section with their own issues. Starting off with Navi, the biggest thing we have to focus on here is this gigantic gap in their map pool. As we all know, Navi are dominant on maps like Mirage, Anubis, Dust 2, but I cannot stress this enough. Navi are absolutely fucking awful at Inferno, and they're not much better at Nuke, to the point that it is a glaring flaw in their ability to be an uncontested #1 team in the world. It is shocking to me that every team who plays Navi right now isn't immediately spam picking Inferno into every series, because odds are you're probably going to win that. Team Liquid stomped them on Inferno 13-4, and then Navi turned around, swept them on Dust 2, swept them on Ancient because they're good on those maps. But on Inferno, they look like a completely different team. They look lost. Alexi B's calling falls apart. Their fragging disappears. I don't know what to make of it, but they can't play Inferno. And this is going to continue to be a gigantic issue for Navi anytime there's a best of 5 looming, because Inferno is almost always going to get played. But again, if you are facing Navi right now and you are a top team and you are not first picking Inferno, you are making a huge mistake, because Navi every single time has to ban Vertigo. They will not play Vertigo. It is their perma ban without exception, and at this point that leaves them exposed, because they either have to go to Nuke or they have to go to Inferno. If you're going to take them anywhere, take them to Inferno. And listen, sometimes their Inferno, they're going to get by you because of their CT side. Bit's going to do really well in the apartments. He's going to dominate there. Their A side's going to be really hard to exploit. But if you get them on the T side, you will be able to exploit them, because I don't know what it is. Navi's decision making, the ability to call mid-round strats on Inferno specifically, doesn't seem to work. We saw it against Faze back at Blast Fall Finals. It's been exposed by Liquid 3 different times now. Play them on Inferno. Other than that, Navi still seems to be operating at their normal capacity. Obviously, no one expected them to lose to Furia in the upper final, but again, Furia, they played their pick ban well. They took them to Nuke, a map they're compromised on. And listen, you pull up into a series where you know you're not facing elimination, you're just looking at seeding. Navi start off slow and they capitulate a series. Wonderful was the only player doing anything against Furia. But at the end of the day, it was just a group stage game, and the top teams in the world are always different in the playoffs. So I don't expect Navi to be nearly as sloppy when it comes to their playoff matches tomorrow. And frankly, if I'm Virtus Pro, you're kind of in a bad spot, because you like to play Dust 2, Mirage, and Ancient all the time, and that's directly in the wheelhouse of Navi. They haven't played much Inferno lately, but again, if James is worth anything as an in-game leader, he is going to pick Inferno against Navi. Now, moving on to Vitality, they have less of a glaring flaw like Navi does, and it's more of a question of will they perform when they absolutely need to. Vitality, unfortunately, have a very worrying tendency to just disappear at random moments. Zywoo does not seem to always be a big game riser. He doesn't seem to rise with the moment unless he's already feeling it. So if he starts off a little bit slow, then we can have a situation like against Heroic where Vitality look vulnerable. Listen, there's no sugarcoating it. We all know what Zywoo can do. He showcased it already at this event. He went for 70 kills in 2 maps against the Mongols, and he carried Vitality over the line in both of those games. A close triple overtime on the first map, then wiped out the Mongols on the second. We know how good Zywoo is. He's arguably the best player this year. He will always be in that conversation. But I want to see him turn it on early in the playoffs and maintain that form all the way out. It'll be a tough early matchup against Mouse, but if he can beat Mouse, he has a matchup against Furia, and Zywoo should be able to go absolutely insane against Furia. Regardless, Vitality and Navi are through to the playoffs. Nobody expected anything less from them. They're the 2 best teams in the world, and I'm not shocked by that result. However, I am absolutely shocked to tell you that Virtus Pro was our next team to make the playoffs. Now, fair is fair. I have been one of the biggest detractors of Virtus Pro for this entire year. Ever since I've been doing recaps on this channel, I have dedicated not an insignificant amount of time to shitting on them, because this team is fraudulent. This team is fake as hell. They have some of the best players in Russia today, and they have done all of goddamn nothing with it. They've looked disjointed, unorganized, lacking firepower, losing to teams they should never lose to, and altogether have been nothing short of disappointing. And credit where credit is due. The Virtus Pro that has been here at IEM Rio has looked a lot better than any other version we have seen since Electronic has joined the team. After losing to the Mongols in their opening set, I thought it was only a matter of time before we inevitably saw Virtus Pro go out of the tournament. Now again, against a team like 9Z, they're a very cool young team from an underrepresented region, and while they have a lot of good aspects, Virtus Pro, at the end of the day, is a great gatekeeper within the top 20. They do not often lose to teams that are worse than them. That has always been true of this team. Their floor is pretty high, it's their ceiling that has seemed so hard for them to reach. Credit to 9Z though, they exploited a very bad Ancient from Virtus Pro. Virtus Pro play Ancient a lot, but they do not win it a lot, so that continues to be a very bad part of their map pool. But VersePro looked way more locked in afterwards. They did their work on Inferno 13-11, and then they closed out the series dominantly on Mirage 13-2, and once again, we are seeing better form from pretty much everybody. Electronic is being more aggressive, being more successful while he's doing it, James is finding more impact with the op, and then we've all known this entire time that Flit and Fame are very good riflers in their own right, and Norbert is an okay enough support piece. So when it all works together, and Fame, Flit, and Electronic can get it done with the rifles, James can back it up with good calling and op impact, then yeah, we see the potential out of this team. They do really well when the system works. In their follow-up series, they come up against Astralis, another team also in a moment of flux, and frankly, they did great work here again and eliminated Astralis in 2 maps. Now Ancient, once again, so volatile for VersePro, it goes to triple overtime, but VersePro hangs on for the win to go up 1-0 in the series. Once again, Electronic being aggressive and successful is the difference maker for this team. Even though he ends up at the bottom of the scoreboard, his space taking enabled Flit and James to find their impact elsewhere. By the way, because I have to get my digs in somewhere, shout out to Cadian going 7 for 26 with a .49 rating, rifle god by the way. And then we pull up to Mirage, and dude, this was a great team effort from VersePro. There was no one person who didn't carry their weight. Look at how balanced this scoreboard is. There's barely a 4-kill difference between all 5 players. Everybody is close to or above a 1.0 rating, and we got some great plays down the stretch by James with the op in his hand, looking much better for the tournament. Talking again broadly about the stats, Electronic and James are both within the top 15 for individuals at this event. That has not been the case for quite a while. And VersePro cap off this great run through the lower brackets with a revenge game against the Mongols, not only taking them out on Ancient 13-10, by the way, that's 3 Ancient wins across 3 series on a map they average a 36% win rate on. That's a great sign. They then followed up with a 13-3 stomp on Dust 2, completely neutralizing the fragging from the Mongols. And once again, Fame, James, Electronic, all finding great impact throughout this series. James clutching up on Ancient, looking good with the op in his hands, getting great impact on Dust 2. There was an HLTV interview that just came out recently from James where he's talking about how nobody feels safe on this team. They know they've been underperforming, and one of the biggest question marks directly from James himself is everybody questioning the ability for him to be an opping IGL, something I've been very critical of, because I don't think opping IGLing can work in CS2. It just doesn't seem to be a good use of the roles. But hey, right now, James is playing above his usual level, looking like the star player he was back in Go, and he's calling a good system. I have grilled VersePro to death before for their lacking, lazy T sides, their horrific tendency to save the moment anything goes wrong on the CT side. But here, they've been more aggressive, they've been more willing to take risks, and they've been more successful in doing so. So credit where credit is due. VersePro, you're in the playoffs, and I want to see you guys continue to do well. I really do. And rounding out our last playoff spot, we have MANYBO1s. And listen, MANYBO1s have been on a very weird stretch of form since the player break. They came into this split easily the 3rd best team in the world, contending for championships, but they never seem to get over the hump of making it through on the biggest stage. Not only have they not been able to conquer that demon, they've also had tournaments where they flamed out much earlier than expected. They went from being this team that was so hard to beat to looking vulnerable and uncoordinated. They were having trouble in the fragging department, and the calling wasn't looking as sharp as it had previously. And here, there was definitely some of that. This is not the EPL winning MANYBO1s from earlier in the year, but they are looking better as a unit, and as a result, they managed to grind through some very difficult series to make it through the lower brackets into a playoff spot. Firstly, they had a nail-biter 2-0 series against Complexity, where both maps went to overtime on Vertigo and Inferno, and for whatever reason, despite whatever form either of these teams tend to be in, they tend to bring the best out of each other because both of these teams were electric on both maps. This wasn't a Complexity where Halzerk, Elige, or Grim were completely missing. Both Halzerk and Elige were incredible, going blow for blow with the MANYBO1s boys, and JT was calling us all game. Floppy and Grim had their moments. You just look over what MANYBO1s were able to do, this was classic MAUs. They were just more clutched. They had the better feel for finishing rounds. They didn't allow gaps to be exploited too much, and the most important part to the MAUs formula was that everybody was getting involved. Xerxion's aggression on the T side was being counteracted with Torji's ability to take space with the op. Brolin and Jimfat individually were incredible as anchors once again, making their CT side so hard to deal with, so that when it came down to those late round situations in overtime on both maps, MAUs found a way. In both overtimes, they didn't concede a single round. And bear in mind, in their last two matchups, Complexity beat MAUs handily. What a turnaround for this team. And they followed that up with what is arguably the best series of the tournament so far, where they pulled up against Faze, a team they have failed to beat in CS2 this year, by the way. They slapped Faze silly 13-7 on Dust 2, where on their CT side, Torji and Xerxion specifically were just unstoppable, completely shutting down the Faze attack. So they take the 1-0 series lead. We go to Mirage, and you think, okay, listen, this is going to be a close affair, but Faze haven't looked like themselves. Would they be able to pull off a miracle and force a map 3? And listen, it got to the point where they were down 9-12. MAUs were in position to end the series 2-0, a dominant victory, a statement victory for MAUs over Faze. But then, credit to Faze, Rops, Frozen, and Brokey weren't going to let that slide. One of Rops' best individual maps in a minute, 26 kills, a 1.35 rating. He claws back the final 3 rounds on the T side to force overtime, and in the overtime, we go back and forth in the first half, Faze winning the first round before MAUs strikes back with 2 CT rounds of their own. We swap sides, MAUs only need 2 more rounds to secure the victory, but Faze played lockdown CT defense, reverse sweeping the second half of overtime to steal the map away, and they do so by dominating MAUs, shutting down their attack entirely. You think, okay, listen, it's Faze. They can pull a series out of nowhere. We're going to nuke. It's a scrappy map. Are Faze going to be able to pull off the miracle and steal a playoff spot? We open up. It's a 6-6 first half. MAUs, they get going on the T side early, but late down the stretch, Faze's CT side was very good at stopping the attack, taking a 3-round run into the second half. MAUs, they win the second half pistol on the back of this insane 3K from Jimfat on the lower bomb site. One of the plays of the year, probably, and they run that momentum straight to the end of the game, only allowing Faze to win 1 round in the second half before eliminating them from the tournament 13-7 to make that last playoff spot. Now listen, this is not, again, the most dominant form of MAUs we have ever seen, but right now their individuals are popping off, and they're going to have to rely on that individual form to make a run in the playoffs. Alright guys, I know, long video, but we're almost done. Let's take a minute to talk about some of the teams who failed to make it to the playoffs here at IEM Rio. Now for Faze, they started off slow and it took a while for them to come into form. Frankly, they were in the hunt in this final map against MAUs, but they couldn't make anything happen on that nuke like we said. So again, this is another 7th to 8th for Faze, another slip up on the way to the major, and they just look like a roster ready for a change, but it's clear that's not going to happen till after the major at best. The other obvious big disappointment here is G2. G2 only played 1 best of 1 and 1 best of 3 before exiting stage left, and having just come off the back of a win at the Blastfall Finals, that is a massive disappointment to basically come in tied for last place. And really, Nico was just not here. He played awful in all of their games, and no amount of Muncie magic could save them from Snacks getting exploited on one side of the map and Nico being asleep on the other, and that's why G2 are not getting a chance to go back-to-back trophies. That is unfortunately the G2 curse. Either they destroy everybody in dominant fashion, or they look like they don't know what they're doing. That is the bed they have made, and we must all lay in it until Snacks loses his job, hopefully in the next 3 months. Overall, I think we got an insanely good playoff bracket, all things considered. Yeah, Furia and Heroic, they are not the best teams you would want to see in the semifinals based on world ranking, but if they keep up their performance from the group stage, I think we'll have some very exciting series. I would like to see one of them continue the upset run and make a finals, but they definitely have a long road ahead of them. It looks like it's going to be Vitality and Navi moving on from the first round matchups, though I do expect MAUs and VersusPro to give them some trouble. We'll see how it all plays out. As usual, I'll be here giving you guys same day recaps all the way through the end of the event now that we're at the playoff stage, so make sure you like, comment, subscribe for all that good stuff. These videos are powered by advanced.gg. Check the link in the description, browse their website, and if you decide to make a purchase, you can use my code LIONS10 at checkout for 10% off. Thank you to advanced.gg. I also work with Refrag. They are by far the best self-improvement platform in CS2. Check out their new Pre-Fire 2.0 game mode. It helps me out immensely in my own practice and warm-up. If you check it out and want to get a subscription with Refrag, you can use my code LION15 for 15% off. Thank you to Refrag. Shout out to my channel members, Justin, Jesse, Furley, Bubblesj, Dr. Cocktor, Milan Berta. If you want to become a channel member, you can do so at the link in the description down below. Make sure you follow me on Twitch as well. I'll be streaming tonight at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Link in the description as usual. And with that, I'll see you guys soon with another video. Peace.